The water inside the old sewer tunnel moved like a slow, poisonous river, thick, dark, and whispering against the concrete walls in a way that made the air feel haunted. Every echo seemed too sharp, every drip too rhythmic, as if the place itself was hiding a heartbeat beneath the grime. The stench was suffocating, a blend of rust, rot, and something metallic that clung to the throat. But none of that stopped the man moving through it. Cole Maddox, former Navy SEAL, held his flashlight low and kept his breathing steady, his boots splashing quietly in the ankle-deep filth. His K9 partner, Thor, a massive Belgian Malinois with eyes that seemed to read danger before humans even sensed it, stalked beside him with his fur slightly raised. They were supposed to be retrieving stolen evidence dumped somewhere in this forgotten stretch of the underground. Nothing more. But the further they went, the more Cole felt a wrongness growing around them, the kind that prickled at the base of his skull. And then, just ahead, Thor suddenly froze, ears forward, muscles coiled, and growled at something hidden in the darkness. That was the moment Cole knew this mission was about to turn into something far more dangerous, far more personal, and far more life-altering than he ever expected. Thor took a cautious step forward, nose twitching rapidly as he drew in the scent. Cole raised his flashlight, angling it down the narrow tunnel. At first, the beam revealed nothing but pipes dripping sludge and a small stream flowing beneath his boots. But then he saw it, something pale, something still, a shape lying half-submerged in the water. Cole's grip tightened instinctively, adrenaline flicking awake inside his veins. "Easy, Thor," he whispered. But Thor didn't need the command. He was already edging toward the shape with slow, controlled steps, tail stiff, posture alert. Cole moved beside him until the beam finally illuminated the truth. A man. No, an officer. Uniform soaked, badge half-ripped, face ghostly white and twisted in pain. His breathing was so faint Cole thought for an instant that he was already gone. But then the man's chest shuddered weakly, breaking the illusion. Cole dropped to his knees immediately, ignoring the icy water soaking through his pants, and checked for a pulse on the officer's neck. It was there, weak, fluttering like a torn flag in a storm, but alive. "Officer, can you hear me?" Cole said firmly, tapping the man's cheek. The officer's eyes flickered open, revealing terror, exhaustion, and something else, desperation. He tried to speak, but only a choked gasp escaped. Cole leaned closer. "Stay with me, you're going to be fine." But the officer's trembling hand lifted slowly, pointing deeper into the tunnel as though trying to speak through gesture instead of words. Cole followed the direction with his flashlight. Nothing but darkness, but the officer's eyes burned with warning, silently begging him to understand. Thor let out another low growl. Cole understood enough. Whatever happened here wasn't an accident. He cut the officer's shirt open with his knife, revealing a bullet wound just below the ribs, clean entry, bleeding slow but dangerously. The sewer water contaminating it made Cole's stomach twist. Whoever shot this man had left him here to die in silence. Abandoned, forgotten. Cole pressed a hand against the wound, applying pressure. The officer gasped in pain, grabbing Cole's wrist weakly. "You're okay," Cole murmured, steady but gentle. "You're not dying here, not today." But the officer's other hand grabbed Cole's collar, yanking him forward with a burst of desperate strength. His lips trembled around a single broken word. "Run!" Then he coughed violently, eyes rolling back for a moment before he slipped into unconsciousness. Cole froze. Run from what? He scanned the tunnel again, shining the flashlight deeper into the shadows. The beam stretched forward but dissolved into blackness. Thor pressed against Cole's leg, body rigid, gaze fixed ahead. Cole slowly placed the officer's head on his folded jacket and activated his radio. "Dispatch, this is Maddox. I've got a downed officer in Sector B of the East Sewer Line. Gunshot wound, possible ambush. I need medical and backup routed." "Static. Only static." He tried again. Still static. The deeper tunnels were shielded by thick layers of concrete, steel, and decades of decay, too deep for reliable transmission. Cole cursed under his breath. He needed to get the officer out fast, but moving him alone through this terrain would be a nightmare. Thor stepped in front of him suddenly, blocking the path ahead. Cole followed the dog's line of focus, feeling the tension in the air tighten like a rope about to snap. Then he heard it. Barely at first, just a faint tapping, like metal scraping concrete. Tab. 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 Slow, methodical, getting closer. Cole's heart rate remained steady, but a chill crawled up his spine. He positioned himself between the threat and the officer's body. Thor crouched low, muscles flexing, ready to pounce or defend at the slightest command. The tapping grew louder. Echoing. Rhythmic. Something or someone was approaching. Cole switched off his flashlight instantly, plunging the tunnel into pitch blackness. He didn't need light, he needed stealth. Thor didn't bark, didn't move, only breathed slowly, silently, perfectly trained. The tapping stopped. Silence swept through the tunnel like a cold wind. Cole reached down and gripped the officer's shoulder, whispering, "We're getting out of here, hold on." But the officer didn't move. Cole hoisted him into a sitting position, bracing his weight. Thor backed up, guarding the flank. Cole began dragging the officer toward the way he came, careful not to make noise. Then movement. Something shifted behind them. Cole spun around. Something was there. He didn't see it, but he felt it, the kind of intuition trained soldiers knew better than their own heartbeat. A presence, watching, waiting. Thor's growl deepened, rumbling so low it vibrated the water around his paws. Cole whispered sharply, "Show yourself." No response. Only breathing. Soft, raspy, predatory. Cole reached for his sidearm, slow and controlled. Suddenly, Thor barked, short, explosive, the signal he gave only when the threat was within striking distance. A figure lunged from the darkness. Cole barely yanked the officer aside before something slammed into the concrete wall. He raised his flashlight and flicked it on, blinding their attacker for a split second. The beam revealed a man, no, not quite a man, covered in grime, eyes wild, face twisted with pain and madness. His shirt was torn, revealing a bulletproof vest smeared with blood. He hissed, yes, hissed, and charged again. Cole fired a warning shot into the ground. "Stop, I won't tell you twice." The man ignored it completely, barreling toward them with impossible speed. Thor launched forward. The collision echoed through the tunnel, dog and attacker crashing into the water with a violent splash. The stranger screamed as Thor clamped onto his forearm, shredding through the sleeve and into muscle. Cole rushed forward, ready to pull Thor back if needed, but Thor knew exactly what he was doing: pin, disable, subdue. But the attacker was strong, inhumanly strong. He slammed Thor against the wall so hard the dog yelped. Cole's blood went cold. He fired again, this time hitting the man in the shoulder. The attacker didn't fall. Didn't scream. Didn't even flinch. He only turned his head and smiled. A sick, broken smile that didn't belong on any sane human face. Cole pulled Thor back, eyes locked on the monstrosity in front of him. "Who did this to you?" he demanded. The injured man's voice was a gurgling rasp. "Too late." Cole steadied his weapon. "Too late for what?" The man lifted a trembling hand, pointing to the unconscious officer. "He knows." Then the man collapsed face first into the sewage, motionless. Thor limped back to Cole's side, shaking off the hit but still alert. Cole crouched, rubbing the dog's neck. "Good boy, you okay?" Thor nudged him once, affirmative but hurting. Cole turned his flashlight toward the deeper tunnel again. If one deranged attacker had found them down here, more could follow. He had to get the officer out before whatever twisted experiment created that man decided to send reinforcements. Cole hoisted the officer onto his shoulder, grunting under the weight but pushing through. "Thor, with me." The dog fell in step, limping but determined. The tapping sound returned, fainter this time, farther away. Or following them. Cole didn't look back. He couldn't afford to. He focused on the officer, on Thor, on getting them to safety. But one thought echoed through his mind like a warning he couldn't silence. If Hale's experiments had made monsters underground, what else was waiting in the darkness? For a long moment, Cole thought the sewer was playing tricks on him. The dim, flickering light, the echoing tunnel, the adrenaline in his veins, all of it could have combined into some hallucination, some twisted memory stepping out of the dark. But Thor didn't hallucinate. Thor's reaction was real, ears pinned back, tail low, confused whine caught somewhere between recognition and unease. The man standing in the shallow stream ahead of them, dripping sewer water, wearing a ruined tactical vest and a haunted expression, was not a ghost. He was flesh and blood, pale, scarred, and impossibly alive. "Grayson," Cole's voice came out rougher than he expected. He had spoken that name only in the past tense for years, at funerals, in dreams, in regrets. The man's eyes flickered with a momentary spark at the sound of his name. Once they had been sharp, bright blue, full of the reckless humor that made danger feel almost fun. Now they were sunken, rimmed in red, ringed with shadows that went deep into a kind of pain Cole recognized too well. Someone who had seen things no one should see. Someone who had been used and broken and kept going anyway because there was no other choice. "They found me," Grayson repeated, voice raw, like the words were scraping their way up from somewhere torn and bleeding inside him. Cole adjusted his grip on the unconscious officer, slumped against the wall, and took one slow step forward. Thor stayed between them, muscles tense, sniffing the air around Grayson like he was catching scents of things that didn't belong to any human. Chemicals, blood, burnt metal, the residue of laboratories and restraints. "Grayson," Cole said again, his mind straining to catch up with reality, "you died. I saw your file, the report, the explosion." Grayson let out a humorless, broken laugh that dissolved into a cough. It echoed in the tunnel, bouncing off the walls like something fractured. "They needed you to believe that," he rasped. "They needed everyone to believe that." His gaze shifted to Thor, softening just for a second. "Still got him, huh? Good boy." Thor gave a cautious whine in response, lingering memory sparking behind his eyes. He'd known Grayson once, a different Grayson, a version of him before whatever hell had carved him into this. Cole's training screamed at him to ask the immediate questions. "Who found you? How are you here? What are those things behind the gate? Who shot the officer?" But he didn't have the luxury of interrogations. The officer's breathing was getting shallower. Thor was bleeding. And somewhere behind them, on the other side of the heavy steel grate, something continued to slam against metal with savage determination. "Talk while we move," Cole said, voice shifting back to command mode. "We're getting him out. This tunnel's compromised. Where's the nearest exit?" Grayson shook his head slowly. "You're walking into the wrong direction, brother." He raised a shaking hand and pointed not toward the faint glow behind him but upward toward a ladder half hidden in shadow, leading to a rusted maintenance hatch in the ceiling. "Surface is that way. You stay ground level, they'll herd you, like they did with me." Cole followed his gesture. He hadn't noticed the ladder before. It blended into the grime-stained concrete like a forgotten skeleton. "You know these tunnels," Cole said slowly. It wasn't a question. "I've been their rat down here," Grayson replied bitterly. "Their test, their cleanup crew, their fail-safe." His gaze dropped to the officer. "He came looking for me, for proof. They tried to make sure he never left." Cole's throat felt dry. "Who?" Grayson's jaw clenched, and for a moment the man he used to be flickered through, defiant, stubborn. "Same ones that built those things you just fought," he said. "Same ones that wired you and Thor's names into their contingency plans, the people behind Project Cerberus." The name hit Cole like a physical blow. Old briefing rooms, redacted documents, classified proposals that had seemed too insane to ever leave the idea phase. A joint operation idea, enhanced handlers, cybernetic augmentation, neural link experiments between man and dog. He remembered the day he'd walked away from it, calling it reckless, unethical, dangerous. Grayson, on the other hand, had called it the future. Cole felt his stomach twist. That program was shut down. Grayson's smile was tired, eyes gleaming with a kind of broken humor. "Officially, on paper, in reality," he spread his arms, indicating the tunnel, the mutated ferals, the officer bleeding at their feet. "Welcome to the pilot site." A heavy impact rattled the steel gate behind them, yanking Cole's attention back to the present. They could dissect the horror later. Right now, survival came first. "Can you climb?" Cole asked, nodding at the ladder. Grayson glanced up at it, then down at his own shaking hands, twitching like nerves were misfiring under the skin. "Not fast. But I'll manage." "Good, you go first," Cole decided. "Take Thor, I'll bring the officer." Thor looked up at Cole with a doubtful snort, clearly not thrilled about climbing anything in his current state, but he obeyed when Cole gave him a firm nod. "Up," Cole commanded gently. Thor placed his paws on the first rung, then the second, muscles straining but determined. Grayson moved in behind him, one arm guiding the dog, the other gripping the ladder with a white-knuckled hold. Each movement looked painful, but he kept going. Cole lifted the officer again, muscles complaining, and maneuvered him toward the base of the ladder. He jammed his shoulder under the man's weight and began climbing one rung at a time, teeth gritted. Water dripped from above, mixing with blood on his hands. The gate behind them shook again. Something snarled, frustrated. The tunnel seemed to hold its breath as they climbed. Halfway up, the officer stirred weakly, a thin sound scraping from his throat. Cole pressed him closer, whispering, "Stay with me, just a little more." Above, Grayson grunted as he shoved Thor ahead of him through the hatch. The metal cover scraped loudly as he forced it open. A blast of cool night air rushed in, blessedly clean compared to the suffocating stink below. Clear, Grayson wheezed. Push him up. Cole didn't need to be told twice. He braced his legs against the rungs and pressed the officer upward. Grayson reached down, grabbing the man's arm and hauling with everything he had. Between them, they dragged the officer onto the surface. Cole climbed the last few rungs and pulled himself out into the open, lungs expanding gratefully as he gulped fresh air. The sky above was streaked with thin clouds, city lights glimmering in the distance. They were in a fenced-off maintenance lot surrounded by gravel and scattered equipment. It looked almost absurdly normal, considering the nightmare that lurked just a few feet below. Grayson lost his balance and fell to one knee, clutching his side. Thor limped over to Cole and pressed his head against his thigh like he was making sure his handler was really there and not another hallucination. Cole knelt, rubbing the dog's skull gently. "You did good, boy, real good." He grabbed his radio again, hopeful. "Dispatch, this is Maddox. Officer down, I repeat, officer down, gunshot wound, possible contamination. I need EMTs and backup at maintenance lot 17 by the East Sewer Junction." This time the radio crackled to life. "Copy that, Maddox, hold position, units en route, ETA 6 minutes. 6 minutes. It felt like a lifetime and a heartbeat at once. Cole turned to the officer, laying him flat on the ground, checking the wound again. The man's eyelids fluttered, his lips pale, his face waxy with blood loss. Cole pressed his hand over the injury, applying fresh gauze from his kit. "Officer," Cole said sharply, "hey, stay with me, talk to me." The officer's eyes opened just a sliver. He stared up at the night sky, confusion flickering before recognition snapped back like a rubber band stretched too far. His gaze shifted to Cole, then to Thor, then, slowly, to Grayson. "You found him," he whispered hoarsely, each word a battle. "Yeah," Cole said quietly, "we found you too." The officer tried to smile. It came out as a grimace. "Didn't think anyone would come. They turned off my radio, locked me down there." His voice shook. "Thought I was just part of the trash." "Not today," Cole said. "You're going to make it. EMTs are on their way." The officer's hand twitched, reaching for Cole's vest. Cole leaned closer so he wouldn't strain. "Easy, save your strength." "Can't," the officer rasped. "No time, they know you're here now, they know he's alive." His eyes slid toward Grayson, who was sitting a few feet away, back against a concrete barrier, watching with a mixture of guilt and resignation. "Who?" Cole asked softly, though he already knew. "Them," the officer whispered. "The ones running the program, the ones in bed with Cerberus." His breathing hitched. "They're in the department, higher than me, higher than my captain." Tears trembled in the corners of his eyes. "I thought I could expose them. I followed a lead, found him, found the lab, they caught me." Cole glanced at Grayson, whose face had gone pale. "What lab?" Cole pressed. The officer swallowed hard, forcing the words through gritted teeth. "Off-site facility, old shipping yard, warehouse 12. They're holding more like him, dogs, people, tests that went wrong." He gripped Cole's wrist with sudden desperation. "You can't let them keep doing it, you can't." His body spasmed with a harsh cough, and blood flecked his lips. Hey, easy," Cole murmured, lifting his head slightly. "Help is almost here." The officer shook his head, eyes wet. "They'll try to bury it, they'll say I was dirty, crazy, on the take." He gave a bitter, cracked laugh that turned into another coughing fit. "They always do." Cole's jaw tightened. He'd seen it before, the machine swallowing the truth and spitting out a cleaner lie. It was easier to discredit a good man than dismantle a corrupt system. "Listen to me," Cole said, voice lowering to a promise. "What you found won't disappear, I won't let it, you have my word." The officer's gaze searched his face as though weighing the worth of that promise. Something in Cole's eyes must have convinced him because he relaxed slightly. "Name Ortiz," he whispered. "Detective Luis Ortiz." "Ortiz," Cole repeated, anchoring it. "You're not dying as some nameless body in a tunnel, you're someone, and I've got you." Ortiz blinked slowly. "In my vest," he gasped. "Inside pocket drive." Cole reached carefully, fingers sliding into the inside of Ortiz's vest. He found it, a small USB drive slick with blood. He pulled it out, wiped it clean, and pocketed it. "Evidence," Ortiz wheezed. "Everything I could pull, files, transfer logs, incident reports, even footage." His eyes filled with tears again. "They used dogs, Maddox, like tools, like disposable guns." His gaze flicked to Thor, then to Grayson. "They used people too." Behind them, sirens began to rise in the distance, faint at first, then growing sharper, closer. Grayson shifted, eyes on the flashing red and blue reflections starting to flicker against the surrounding buildings. "You know they're not all coming to help," he muttered. "Some of them are going to be theirs." Cole knew he was right. He also knew something else. The moment he plugged that drive in, the moment he started pulling on the threads Ortiz had handed him, his life would never go back to what it was. No quiet consulting gigs, no low-risk contract work, no pretending he'd left the war behind him. This wasn't just a rescue anymore. This was the beginning of a war. A low groan drew his attention back to Ortiz. The officer grabbed Cole's sleeve one last time, a final burst of strength. "Promise me," he whispered, voice fatting. "Promise me you'll finish it if I don't make it." Cole leaned closer, his free hand resting on Ortiz's chest as if to steady his heart. "I promise," he said, the words ringing with a weight that settled into his bones. "On my life, I'll finish it." Ortiz exhaled slowly, something like relief softening the lines in his face. The paramedics burst through the gate a minute later, voices shouting orders, hands moving fast, bags opening, equipment clattering. They swarmed around Ortiz, slipping oxygen over his face, starting IV lines, applying pressure dressings. One of them told Cole to move back. He did, though every instinct resisted. A uniformed sergeant approached him, eyes sharp. "You Maddox?" she asked. "Yeah. We got the call. What the hell happened down there?" Cole glanced at the open hatch, the dark hole leading back into the sewer. He saw flashes of mutated animals, a deranged man who couldn't feel pain, the haunted stare of a teammate he'd mourned, and a program that was supposed to be dead but had only gone underground. "A lot," he said quietly, "and it's not over." Thor pressed his head against Cole's thigh again. Cole absently scratched his ears, gaze drifting toward Grayson, who watched from a distance like a man standing outside his own life. In that moment, as sirens wailed and EMTs fought to keep Ortiz alive, Cole understood with painful clarity that his life had just split neatly in two. Before this night, and everything after, he reached into his pocket and felt the cold shape of the USB drive dig into his palm. What happened in that sewer hadn't just saved a dying officer. It had forced Cole Maddox back into a fight he thought he'd left for good, and this time the enemy wasn't across an ocean. It was right here, in his own city, wearing badges and suits and smiles. And he wasn't walking away. Night settled heavily over the maintenance lot, swallowing the flashing lights of ambulances and patrol cars into a haze of red-blue reflections that danced across puddles on the pavement. Cole stood slightly apart from the chaos, arms crossed, Thor at his side. EMTs worked feverishly on Ortiz, their movements quick and practiced, their voices sharp with urgency. Grayson lingered near the shadows of a large utility truck as if afraid too much light might expose him. Cole couldn't blame him. A man who had been buried by his own government tended to feel safer where the darkness could hide him. Ortiz was loaded into the back of the ambulance after several long minutes that felt like hours. One of the medics turned toward Cole. "He's critical," she said, breathless, "but he's alive. We might have a chance if we move fast." With that, the doors slammed shut and the vehicle roared away, sirens slicing through the night. Cole exhaled slowly, the tension in his chest tightening instead of loosening. He felt Thor gently nudge his leg, offering silent comfort. Cole knelt, rubbing the dog's head. "You did good," he murmured. "You stayed with him, you saved him." Thor responded with a soft whine, pressing into Cole's hand. A voice cut through the air behind him. "He won't last the night." Cole didn't turn around immediately. He knew that voice, smooth, weary, and fractured. Grayson stepped closer, arms wrapped around himself, shoulders hunched like a man expecting to be hit. "You don't know that," Cole said calmly. Grayson scoffed, looking away. "I do, because I saw what they did to the others. Ortiz wasn't supposed to get out. He wasn't supposed to even make it above ground." Cole rose slowly, "And yet he did." Grayson's jaw twitched. "Thanks to you." Cole didn't reply. He simply stared at him, trying to reconcile the man before him with the teammate he remembered, brilliant, brave, annoyingly optimistic, with a laugh that used to shake the walls of their barracks. Grayson now looked like he'd crawled out of hell itself, thin, bruised, twitching with leftover trauma. "How long?" Cole finally asked. "How long have they kept you?" Grayson's breath caught, his eyes glistened with something raw. 3 years, he whispered. 3 years underground, 3 years in labs, cages, restraints, simulations. They said they were rebuilding me, making me stronger, making me useful again. Cole stepped closer. They tortured you. They called it training, Grayson muttered bitterly. Conditioning, optimization, but underneath it all, it was punishment because I knew too much, because I volunteered for Cerberus but questioned it too late. Cole clenched his jaw. Why didn't they kill you? Grayson's eyes locked onto his, intense, trembling. Because I was proof it could work. Cole's stomach knotted. Cerberus was never supposed to work, it was a nightmare. Grayson laughed quietly. Tell that to the men who funded it. They didn't care whether it worked the way we imagined. They just needed something they could control, something they could sell, something they could unleash on the world without fingerprints. Cole shook his head slowly. You were my brother, they used you. They broke me, Grayson corrected, and when I escaped I thought I was free, I thought I'd beaten them, but I was wrong. His voice wavered. They didn't come for me, they came for the thing inside me. Cole froze. What thing? Grayson reached up with shaking fingers and touched behind his ear just below the skull. Cole saw a faint, circular scar, too precise, too deep. No, Cole whispered. Grayson nodded, tears forming. Prototype neural sync node, early version of the one in that dog. They wanted to create a soldier who could think faster, react faster, move without fear, but it wasn't control enough, not like the dogs. The dogs obey without questioning, humans don't. Cole felt nausea climb up the back of his throat. So they abandoned you. They tried, Grayson said, but I didn't die. I crawled out of a transport halfway through disposal. They thought the river would finish the job. He looked down at his hands, trembling. I crawled into the sewer system to hide. I've been running ever since. Cole stepped closer, voice steady but heavy with emotion. You should have come to me. Grayson met his eyes with an ache that broke something inside Cole. I didn't know if you were part of it. Cole flinched like he'd been punched. You think I'd help those monsters? I didn't know what to think, Grayson snapped, taking a step back. They lied to me, manipulated me, told me we were heroes, told me you betrayed the mission, told me I should have died before walking away. I didn't know what was real anymore. Cole swallowed hard. He wanted to reach out, but Grayson was shaking too violently, like a trapped animal. The sergeant from earlier approached, clipboard in hand. Maddox, I need a statement. She paused, glancing at Grayson suspiciously. And who is he? Cole opened his mouth, but Grayson stepped back into the shadows instantly, tension snapping tight in every line of his body. Cole held up a hand to stop the sergeant. He's with me. She raised an eyebrow. He looks injured. He's fine, Cole replied sharply. Thor growled softly, the warning kind. Cole turned. The fence at the far edge of the lot rattled, just once. The sergeant clicked her flashlight on. Probably a rat, she muttered. Cole's instinct screamed otherwise. He scanned the darkness, eyes narrowing. Stay behind me, he said quietly. Why? The sergeant asked, confused. Thor's ears shot forward, his stance stiffened. Cole whispered one word. Move. The sergeant stepped back instantly. A faint glint appeared beyond the fence, metal catching moonlight for a split second. Cole's grip tightened on his gun. Someone was watching them. Someone who had tracked Ortiz. Someone who saw Grayson alive. Then, like a shadow dissolving, the figure vanished. Cole ran to the fence, scanning the area, but the night swallowed whatever or whoever had been there. Nothing remained but a soft, metallic scent in the air. He turned back toward the sergeant. No one leaves this lot, he said firmly, no one. The sergeant frowned. Maddox, I need to know what's going on. You don't want to, Cole replied. Grayson staggered forward, breath trembling. Cole, they're not just watching, they're waiting. They sent scouts, they'll come back with more. Cole stepped toward him. Then we prepare. Grayson shook his head violently. You don't understand, this isn't a rescue anymore. They're going to wipe every witness, every piece of evidence, including you, including me. They aren't scared of the police or the department. They built half of it. Cole clenched his fists, fury simmering. They want a war. Grayson stared at him, eyes hollow. They already declared it. A rumble in the distance, a sound too heavy for a regular vehicle, echoed through the air. Thor growled. Cole's spine stiffened. He recognized that sound. Armored transport. Cerberus strike team. Coming for unfinished business. Cole positioned himself between his people and the approaching threat, eyes fixed on the dark road. Grayson's voice cracked as he whispered, "Cole, they didn't come to capture us." He paused, swallowing. "They came to erase us. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info." The ground trembled beneath their feet, a low vibration that rolled across the asphalt like distant thunder. Cole felt the shift before anyone else processed it, years of combat instincts tuning him to the sound of armored engines long before they came into view. Thor's reaction confirmed everything. The dog pressed against Cole's leg, hackles raised, a deep growl reverberating from his chest. Grayson staggered back, eyes wide with a terror that didn't belong to the man he once was. It belonged to someone who had survived the unthinkable and knew exactly what was coming. The sergeant glanced between them, confused. "What is that, a truck?" Cole shook his head slowly. "Something worse." The rumble grew louder, metallic and heavy, accompanied by the faint grinding sound of reinforced treads tearing across gravel. A spotlight beam flicked across the chain-link fence and then snapped off, as if someone was checking their position but didn't want to announce it. Cole's pulse quickened. He reached for the pistol holstered at his hip, checking the magazine by feel, knowing full well it wouldn't be enough against what was approaching. "Everyone inside the workshop," Cole ordered, voice sharp. The sergeant frowned. "Maddox." "Now." It wasn't a request. The sergeant and two officers obeyed, quickly moving toward the building. Cole grabbed Grayson's arm when he hesitated. "Move." Grayson flinched at the touch, then nodded tightly and limped after the others. Thor stayed glued to Cole's side, limping slightly but refusing to leave him. They hurried inside the old maintenance workshop and slammed the doors shut. Cole immediately dragged a steel tool chest in front of the entrance to create a makeshift barricade. The sergeant helped, her breathing heavy with confusion. "Maddox, what the hell is going on? Who are these people?" Cole didn't answer until Thor positioned himself squarely between the door and Cole, body tense, ready. Only then did he turn to her. "Listen to me carefully. Whoever is out there, whatever is coming, they're not cops, they're not military, they're not anyone you can negotiate with." The sergeant held her gun tight. "How do you know?" Cole nodded toward Grayson, who leaned weakly against a workbench with shaking hands. "Because they're the reason he's been underground for years." Then Cole pointed to the metal hatch they'd climbed out of. "And they're the ones who sent those things after us." The sergeant opened her mouth, probably to ask another question, but the ground shook violently, cutting her off. The lights flickered, dust drifted from the ceiling in thin streams. Thor barked once, sharp warning. Every single person in the room went still. Outside, the armored transport finally came into view through the workshop's high windows. A matte black vehicle, shaped like a hybrid between a tank and a riot van, rolled into the lot. No logos, no markings, only thick plating, tinted bulletproof glass, and a reinforced turret-like mount on top that pivoted slowly as if scanning the area. Cole's blood ran cold. Cerberus had field units now. "How the hell did they find us this fast?" the sergeant whispered. Grayson's voice cracked. "I told you, they tracked me, they tracked the officer, they tracked the dog, they have every entry point wired, they knew you, climb out." Cole stared through the window. "They weren't scouting." "No," Grayson whispered, "they were waiting." The transport doors hissed open. 4 figures emerged. Not in uniforms. In exo-tactical suits, sleek, dark armor reinforced along the spine, neck, and chest. Helmets with mirrored visors that reflected the room like soulless eyes. They held weapons too advanced for police and too illegal for any military unit Cole knew, compressed rail rifles, sound-suppressed and brutally accurate. One of them raised a handheld scanner. It pinged. Then the visor turned directly toward the workshop. Cole took a breath. "They've locked onto us." The sergeant stiffened. "What do they want?" Grayson's voice cracked. "To kill everything in this building." Cole pointed at the far end of the workshop. "There's a back exit, we move now." A rail round smashed through the wall behind him, sending a spray of splintered wood and metal across the room. The officers ducked, shielding their faces. Thor barked fiercely, positioning himself between Cole and the incoming threat. The second shot followed instantly, near silent, impossibly fast, slicing through a metal shelf and embedding itself in the concrete floor. "They're marking us," Cole said, his voice calm even as tension bled into his veins. "Testing angles, finding weak points." "How do you know that?" the sergeant cried. Because, Cole said, locking eyes with her, that's exactly what I would do. The workshop erupted with another tremor as the transport's engine roared and the vehicle lurched forward, ramming the chain-link fence aside like paper. The attackers advanced in formation, moving with unnatural precision, their helmets turning in unison toward the workshop like predators zeroing in on prey. Cole grabbed Grayson by the arm again. We move now. Grayson's voice was faint. Cole, I can't. Cole yanked him forward hard enough to jolt him. Yes, you can. You survived 3 years of hell. You can walk 10 more steps. Grayson's jaw clenched. He forced himself upright. They ran toward the back door. But before they reached it, the wall near the entrance exploded inward as the rail rifles tore through cinderblock like it was cardboard. The barricade didn't last 3 seconds. Tools clattered to the ground. Light fixtures fell. One officer was knocked to the floor from the shockwave. Cole pushed Thor toward the sergeant. Take him, go. But Thor refused to leave. The dog planted himself in front of Cole, barking furiously. Thor had made his choice. The sergeant swallowed hard. Maddox, if we run, they'll gun us down outside. Then we draw them inside, Cole said. Limit their angles, use the environment. Against those, she gestured wildly. Those aren't soldiers, those are machines in suits. Machines still bleed, Cole said, and they can still be stopped. Grayson staggered forward, hands trembling. They won't stop until they neutralize you. You're the anomaly, the one who walked away. Cole's eyes burned with purpose. Then let's give them a fight. Another rifle round blasted through the outer wall. Then another. Dust rained from the ceiling. The attack was seconds away from breaching. Cole turned to the others. Positions now. The sergeant and remaining officer dropped behind heavy tool cabinets. Cole pulled Grayson behind a workbench and shoved a wrench into his hands. If anyone gets close, you swing. Grayson let out a broken laugh. This is insane. Cole's voice softened for the first time since the shooting began. Yeah, and we're still doing it. The front wall ruptured as the first exo-soldier stepped through the debris, visor reflecting the room like a twisted funhouse mirror. Cole braced himself. Thor growled deeply at his side. Grayson tightened his grip on the wrench. The sergeant pressed her back against a toolbox, breathing hard. The soldier raised his weapon. The second soldier entered behind him. Then the third. And finally the fourth. All visors locked on Cole. A voice crackled through their comms, distorted, cold, familiar. Terminate Maddox. Cole didn't hesitate. He fired. And the workshop descended into chaos. Gunfire, metal screams, sparks skittering across the floor. As man, dog, and broken survivor faced the monsters created by their own government. They weren't fighting to win. They were fighting to survive the next 60 seconds. And somewhere outside, a second transport rumbled to life. Reinforcements were coming. The workshop exploded into a war zone the moment Cole fired. His first shot hit the visor of the lead exo-soldier dead center, cracking the mirrored surface but not stopping him. The man, if he was still a man under all that armor, staggered only half a step before raising his rifle and blasting a rail round straight at Cole's position. Cole rolled behind a stack of tire racks, the round slicing past him and detonating against the far wall with a burst of white-hot sparks. Thor lunged without hesitation. The Malinois slammed into the nearest soldier like a missile, jaws locking onto the armored forearm and forcing the rail rifle downward. Sparks flew as the weapon discharged into the concrete floor. The soldier roared, shaking his arm violently, trying to dislodge the dog, but Thor held on, muscles rippling, teeth sunk deep. Thor down, Cole shouted, not to stop him but to avoid the incoming hit. Thor released at the command and dropped low just as Cole fired 2 rounds at the second soldier closing in from the flank. The bullets struck the chest plating, sparks again, no penetration. These suits were hardened, military-grade, prototype-level defense. Grayson, trembling but fueled by adrenaline, stumbled forward with the wrench raised like a desperate weapon. The third soldier reached him first, swinging the butt of his rifle like a club. Grayson ducked by instinct rather than skill, the swing slicing the air above his head. He swung the wrench wildly, connecting with the soldier's knee joint. A metallic crack echoed as the joint buckled slightly. The soldier staggered. The sergeant took the opening. She shot twice, hitting the exposed joint in rapid succession. The armor sparked violently and the soldier collapsed onto one knee. She yelled, "Keep targeting the joints, the armor's weakest there." Cole nodded sharply. Copy. He fired at the elbows, knees, and neck seam of the first soldier. The second round slipped between a plate and wiring. The soldier spasmed, jerking violently as the suit malfunctioned, then crashed backward through the remains of a metal shelf. Thor didn't wait. He launched onto the fallen soldier's chest, ripping at exposed cables as the suit crackled with electricity. The second soldier charged straight for the sergeant. She dove behind a welding machine. The soldier grabbed the heavy metal equipment and flung it across the shop like it weighed nothing. It crashed through a workbench, sparks exploding everywhere. Cole sprinted forward, grabbing a long steel pry bar from the ground. As the second soldier turned toward him, Cole swung it like a battering ram. The metal bar slammed into the soldier's helmet with a jarring clang. The impact cracked the visor fully, revealing part of a human face beneath, eyes unfocused, pupils dilated, skin pale. The soldier wasn't just enhanced. He was drugged, conditioned, controlled. Cole didn't have time to process it. The soldier grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off the ground effortlessly. Cole gasped, kicking out, forcing his body to twist. He jammed the pry bar under the soldier's arm, using leverage to break the hold. They fell to the ground together. Cole rolled away, coughing as the soldier rose like something inhuman. Before he could react, Thor slammed into the soldier's back, knocking him forward. The sergeant reloaded and fired at the exposed wiring in the soldier's shoulder. The round hit exactly the right place. The soldier convulsed and fell, twitching. 3 down. 1 left. And this one was bigger. He stepped through the dust and debris with slow, deliberate movements. His armor was heavier, reinforced along the collarbone and ribs. His visor glowed faintly red, different from the others. The weapon he carried wasn't a rifle. It was a shock baton, industrial grade, humming with energy. Cole's stomach sank. This wasn't a soldier. This was an executioner. As the baton crackled to life, sending arcs of electricity dancing across the metal floor, Grayson stepped back, terror crawling across his face. That one, he whispered, barely audible. He was in the labs. He trained on us. They called him a handler. Cole narrowed his eyes. He's not handling anything tonight. The executioner moved faster than anything that size should have been able to. He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides and swung. Cole ducked just in time, feeling the electricity brush the top of his hair. The baton smashed into the wall, blasting concrete into dust. Thor tried to intercept, leaping toward the soldier's exposed back. But the executioner swung backward blindly, the baton clipping Thor's side. Electricity surged through the dog's body. Thor yelped, a sound Cole had heard only once before on a battlefield far from home, and fell to the ground, convulsing. Cole's world narrowed into a pinpoint. Thor! He fired without aiming, rage guiding him instead of discipline. The bullets ricocheted off the armor, but one struck the exposed seam at the soldier's hip. The executioner staggered, not enough, but it gave Cole 2 seconds. 2 seconds to run. He charged the soldier head-on. The executioner swung down, aiming to cleave Cole's skull in half, but Cole slid low, grabbing the fallen pry bar. With every ounce of strength he had left, he jammed the metal bar into the soldier's knee joint and twisted with a roar. Armor cracked. Wires popped. The joint buckled. The executioner stumbled. The sergeant fired at the exposed seam. Grayson, shaking violently, swung the wrench into the back of the soldier's neck plate. The armor split. The baton dropped from the soldier's hand, sizzling on the floor. Thor struggled back to his feet, limping but furious, and leapt once more, his jaws clamping onto the soldier's unprotected calf. The executioner roared. Cole rose and slammed the pry bar into the soldier's throat seam with brutal force. Sparks burst from the armor. The soldier convulsed violently, the suit malfunctioning, the neural sync wiring frying. Then, he fell. A heavy final crash. Silence washed across the workshop, dust settled slowly, Cole's chest heaved, his hands shook. The sergeant lowered her weapon, eyes wide with disbelief. Grayson collapsed against the wall, gasping, wrench slipping from his fingers. Thor limped to Cole and pressed his head against the man's chest. Cole knelt and wrapped both arms around the dog, voice cracking. Good boy, my brave boy. But the silence didn't last. A faint mechanical hum seeped through the twisted workshop windows. The sergeant stiffened. What is that? Cole stood slowly. Through the thick smoke outside, two new shapes appeared. Not transports. Drones. Sleek black high-altitude tactical drones descending low too low. Grayson stared in horror. Oh no 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 Cole, they're prepping a burn. The sergeant blinked. A what? Cole's blood froze. They're going to wipe the site, destroy evidence, kill everyone left. Burn protocol? Grayson whispered, trembling so hard he almost fell. They're going to level this whole lot, no survivors. Cole grabbed Thor's harness and pulled Grayson to his feet. We move now. But which way? The sergeant cried. Cole pointed to the drainage culvert beyond the fence. There. The drones dropped lower. Red lights armed. The execution team switched tactics. This wasn't a fight anymore. This was annihilation. Cole dragged Thor, shoved Grayson forward, waved urgently at the remaining officer and sergeant. Run! Behind them, the drones fired their first incendiary charge. The workshop erupted into a fireball. And the explosion threw all 5 of them into the night. The explosion swallowed the night. A wave of heat slammed into Cole's back like a giant's fist, lifting him off the ground and hurling him through the air. The world spun sky, gravel, smoke, flames, sky again, until he crashed onto the concrete with a bone-rattling thud that sent stars bursting across his vision. His ears rang violently, drowning out the roar of the fire behind him. The smell of burning metal and fuel filled his lungs. He coughed, rolling onto his side, trying to suck in air that wasn't superheated. Thor, he croaked, pulling himself up despite the stabbing pain in his ribs. Through the drifting smoke, he saw a blur of tan fur limping toward him, whining sharply. Thor stumbled against Cole's chest, shaking violently, ears flat, the side of his body blackened from the explosion. Cole wrapped both arms around him, burying his face in the dog's neck for a moment, just to confirm he was breathing. I've got you, he whispered, voice cracking. You're okay, buddy, you're okay. A groan came from somewhere behind him. Grayson. Cole forced himself up, lungs screaming, vision blurred. He staggered toward the twisted heap of bodies nearby. The sergeant lay face down on the ground but pushed herself up with trembling arms, coughing as the smoke thickened. The remaining officer pulled himself from behind a chunk of broken concrete, bleeding from the forehead but alive. And Grayson. Cole found him lying in a shallow ditch where the blast had thrown him. His face was pale, his body shaking like every nerve was firing wrong. Cole knelt beside him. Grayson, talk to me, can you hear me? Grayson blinked vaguely at the sky, chest heaving. Still not dead, he muttered, voice shaky but trying to sound like a joke. Cole exhaled sharply in relief. Stay with me. Grayson grabbed Cole's wrist suddenly, eyes wide with fear. Cole, they're not done. Cole looked up. The drones. They hovered above the burning workshop, red targeting lights sweeping the lot like vultures circling a fresh corpse. The flames illuminated their sleek frames as they repositioned, adjusting aim for another strike. The first incendiary blast had destroyed the building. The next would kill anyone still moving. The sergeant limped toward Cole. What do? We can't outrun drones. Cole's mind raced, scanning the lot, fences, debris, burning metal. No real cover, no vehicles left intact, no way to hide. The drone's targeting lights locked onto movement. Onto them. Cole grabbed Grayson under the arm. Everyone move. Where? The sergeant shouted, panic edging her voice. Drainage culvert, Cole yelled, now. The group bolted, Thor limping beside Cole, every step sending a jolt of agony through his injured body but refusing to stop. The officer stumbled and nearly fell, but the sergeant threw his arm over her shoulder and dragged him along. Behind them, the drones whined, a high-pitched rising sound like a blade spinning too fast. Charging another strike. Cole vaulted over a shattered toolbox, shoved Grayson ahead, and sprinted toward the rusted drainage tunnel at the far end of the lot. It was barely big enough for a grown man to crawl through, but it might shield them from the blast long enough to survive. Faster, Cole shouted, move. The sergeant and officer dove into the tunnel. Grayson collapsed at the entrance, gasping. Cole shoved him through. Thor limped inside next. Then the drones fired. Cole dove into the pipe a split second before another blast shook the earth. The shockwave slammed into his legs, dragging him several feet deeper into the pipe, scraping his hands and knees raw. Gravel and burning debris rained at the tunnel's mouth. Then silence. No, not silence. The low-whirring hum of drones repositioning. Cole breathed hard, heart-pounding, smoke filling the cramped pipe. Grayson coughed violently. We're trapped. Cole checked on Thor, running his hand along the dog's body. Thor whimpered softly but leaned into Cole's touch. Alive, hurt but alive. We're not trapped, Cole said, forcing calm into his voice. We're buying time. For what? The sergeant snapped. She wasn't angry at him, she was terrified. There's no backup coming, they'll level this whole block. They won't, Cole said. The officer groaned. How do you know? Cole's eyes narrowed. Because they want something from me. And me, Grayson whispered. Pieces clicked together inside Cole's mind. The ambush, the speed, the precision. They hadn't sent enough soldiers to take on a SEAL and a K-9 team unless they expected something else to weaken him. The bomb. Burn protocol wasn't just about eliminating witnesses. It was about flushing targets out. They want us alive, Cole realized, or at least not dead yet. Grayson nodded weakly. They want the node inside me, they want the tech in Thor, they want to erase Ortiz and retrieve everything he discovered. He looked directly at Cole, eyes trembling. And they want you because you're the one variable they can't predict. The sergeant shook her head. Why him? Because, Grayson said faintly, Cole is the only person who ever challenged Cerberus, the only one who walked away, and they don't allow loose ends. Cole clenched his fists. Thor growled softly, ears twitching, sensing approaching danger. Shadowy shapes appeared outside the pipe, boots crunching gravel. Voices followed. Cold professional. Visual confirmed, explosion incomplete, survivors present. Thermal signals inside pipe, 4 no 5 readings. Orders. A brief pause. Then a chilling answer. Terminate all except the anomaly, use tranquilizer darts, retrieve Asset 2 and Asset 3, finish the rest. The sergeant grabbed Cole's arm. They mean. I know, he said. The footsteps approached the pipe mouth. Cole looked at Grayson, at the sergeant, at the injured officer, and finally at Thor. A choice sat in his chest like burning iron. Cole, Grayson whispered, voice shaking, we can't fight them like this. No, Cole agreed, not like this. He reached slowly into his vest and pulled out the small USB drive Ortiz had given him, the evidence Cerberus would kill to find. He shoved it into Grayson's hand. Grayson froze. What now, Cole, you take it. They're not here for me anymore, Cole said quietly. They're here because they think they can control me, but they'll kill all of you to make that happen. Thor whined urgently, sensing the shift in his handler's breathing. Cole placed a hand on Thor's head. I need you to protect them now. Thor's ears flattened. He pressed into Cole as if begging him not to say what was coming. Cole looked at the others. They want me alive, that gives you a window. The sergeant shook her head violently. Number Maddox, don't do this. Cole crawled forward toward the pipe entrance. Voices grew louder. Weapons were raised. He turned back one last time. Get Ortiz's evidence to someone who can expose Cerberus, he said quietly. Grayson, listen to me, you survived hell, you can survive this, the world needs to know what they did. Grayson's eyes filled with tears. You can't just hand yourself over. Cole gave him a sad, exhausted smile. Grayson, I'm not surrendering. Another step forward. The sergeant grabbed at him. Maddox. Cole looked at Thor and his voice softened in a way it never did in battle. Good boy, stay with them. Thor let out a soft, heartbroken cry. Cole turned and crawled out of the pipe. Hands raised. The armed soldiers froze. Weapons locked onto him. One spoke into his comm. Anomaly acquired. Cole stared him down and said nothing. Another soldier approached with restraints. The sergeant's muffled sob echoed from inside the culvert. Grayson whispered, Cole, come back. As the soldiers closed in, Cole raised his chin. Take me in, he said quietly, and leave them. The lead soldier nodded once. Agreed. As they bound his wrists, Cole made one silent vow. He would survive whatever came next. He would find Cerberus. And he would burn it to the ground.